Fear is the greatest burden we carry. Let me start by asking you, what would you do and who would you be in your life if fear was not a factor? In 2012, I was a junior at Syracuse University, and like any ambitious young college student, I had come up with my plan for how I was going to change the world. I was going to lead the charge on getting more women elected to public office. And it was going to start right on my college campus. I would recruit women and train them to run for student government with the hopes that they would run in their communities after college was over. And I wanted to be a part of this too, myself. So I took this opportunity to make this the subject matter of a major research paper, and I had a few revelations along the way that I hadn't expected. It's not that women weren't winning elections at the same rates as their male counterparts, but they weren't running at the same rates to begin with. And fear was a huge part of this. Fear of the lack of support for working mothers, fear of antiquated gender roles and stereotypes, fear of sexual harassment. These are all things that resonated with me, as I had convinced myself not to run for student body president earlier that year. I had let fear talk me out of doing what I wanted to do, but eventually I came around, because I realized that the risks far, far were beneath the rewards. And we don't make a change unless we get in front of our fears and face them. So I was reminded in this moment of one of my favorite quotes. It's from Eleanor Roosevelt. Do one thing each day that scares you. And in this moment, this became less of an inspirational mantra and more of a call to action. Do one thing each day that scares you. I kept this near and dear to my heart, and my mission was less about gender parity and more about collectively getting people to get past their fears so we could benefit from everyone's full talents and full capabilities in our world. I kept this near and dear to my heart as I had the quote hanging in my room. It was the background on my phone. It was on my refrigerator. And in trying moments, I would tell myself, Allie, this is your time to do one thing today that scares you. It wasn't until my journey manifested into something much bigger that this really, really became a part of my life. In 2015, I decided to compete for Miss Rhode Island and the opportunity to represent the Ocean State at Miss America. And in the months leading up to the competition, I had numerous public appearances, speaking engagements, media events, training, and rehearsals. And of course, there were scary moments along the way. And I was obviously thinking about the Miss America telecast and stepping up to the infamous onstage question and the idea of wearing a swimsuit and high heels on national television. These were all scary things. And not even to mention the fact I had only gotten to pageants as a teenager to get past my paralyzing fear of public speaking. I put myself right at the helm of what scared me the most so I could overcome it and grow. Moving forward in my time as Miss Rhode Island, it became a year of advocacy. It was not just a one-night telecast, it was something much bigger. And I was able to promote my platform, Leading Ladies, equipping young women with the skills to lead, in pursuits of getting more young women involved in leadership and getting them past their fears. I loved talking to young women about what scared them the most and how they could get past that and be their best version of themselves. So as this time was coming to an end as Miss Rhode Island, it was the spring of 2016, and I was looking for a new way to challenge myself. And I started thinking about author Malcolm Gladwell's rule of 10,000 hours. It's the idea that it takes 10,000 hours of you practicing your craft to become an expert in it. And I started thinking, what if we could all be experts in courage? And maybe we don't need 10,000 hours of practicing courage or 10,000 attempts of doing things that are courageous, but we could become cognizant of how we let fear manifest itself in our daily lives and instead counteract that so we could get past our fears and do the things that we're meant to do and be the people we're meant to be. So I came up with a concept called the scare jar. It's kind of like a swear jar, but you write down what you've done every single day that scared you. You put the date, the action, put it on a Post-it, stick it in the jar, and a year or so from now, you'd open it up and see the things that had scared you, the things that may no longer faze you, and how you've grown personally and professionally. And this was a little bit of a daunting task, because I think, while I have a lot of momentum now, but do I really want to keep this up for a full year? And a few days later, I had gone to a women's leadership workshop, and the speaker really hit home when she said, "Fear is energy, and fear means go." So I decided to commit myself to this, and my time as Miss Rhode Island was coming on up, and I had some big, scary things ahead for me in the coming year. At this time, I was a graduate student at Brown University, and I don't know about any of you, but I am not a math person. Math is terrifying to me, but it was something I had to do in order to get my degree. So it wasn't the taking of the math course that was particularly scary, because it was something I had to do, but it was how I practiced courage in the classroom. I went back to Brown to retake this class. It was statistics. And I raised my hand when I was lost, which was often. I put my pride aside and I asked for help again and again and again until I got it right. And eventually I conquered this. I moved on, graduated from Brown, and the next step was to pack up all of my bags and moved to northern Vermont. I moved to a state that I had little time in. I had never been in northern Vermont. I knew nobody in northern Vermont except for the young female candidate who had hired me to be her campaign manager. So I moved on up to Vermont, took on this challenge in the election of 2016. And while I was in Vermont, I started thinking of other ways that I could continue to practice my courage and do one thing each day that scares me. So alongside math, I was always very adversely affected to the idea of running, and running for fun. So I entered my first 5K, and what was terrible and slow and painful has become something that I love and I thrive on, and what was a terrible 3-mile run has started off many, many more miles, and the miles have come, and I've gotten faster and faster, and the distances have just gotten longer. And it's something that I'm so thankful to have as an outlet in my life today that I wouldn't have had otherwise if I hadn't dared to get involved in the first place. So using this momentum, eventually the election was over, and I needed to come back home and figure out my next career move. And there was something that had been on my heart, and something that I had been thinking about, but had long let fear get in the way of. So I made the next big career move. I did something that had scared me, and I joined the military. And in doing so, I realized that I had come into a whole new world where I was going to be doing a lot of things that scared me all the time. Often more than one thing during the day would be challenging and scary. And it's something that over the past year and a half of my life I have been so grateful for, especially because I've been able to live my mantra. So whatever it is, I'm sure there are things you are thinking of right now that scare you. Fear manifests itself in different ways in our lives. Maybe it's leaving your job and starting a new career. It's having a difficult conversation with a loved one. It's raising your hand in class when you have no idea what's going on, or asking for help. Or getting involved in politics in a time that we are so divided and things are so tumultuous, but our voices are needed now more than ever. So it is my hope that you leave here today with a refined sense of how you can face your fears, set up a timeline for yourself, find an accountability partner, speak your goals, do them. And in that, be daring daily and find your power as you practice courage. Thank you.